welcome back. This is the second part to a video that I started last week. If you haven't seen it, I recommend that you watch that first because it will make rather more sense of this. You can see the image that I created just here, and the link to it is up there. That video was all about how I shot this particular image and the ideas around why I was shooting. I'll go a little bit into that again here. And this video is about how I edited it to look somewhat like the finished version here. Before I go into the editing processing of this, you may remember last week I went into a little bit about how I can't show you a RAW file. Now let me explain that a little bit more. RAW files are the data that's kind of straight off the sensor of the camera. It is completely unedited. Each camera will give you a different file format, which requires a different codec in the computer to read it, not just in the computer, but also within the software that you're using. So you might be using, say, Capture One or Lightroom or Luminar. Yeah, lots of different RAW processors out there. But there's no standard way of processing these files from them. They all have their own kind of interpretation. And it's the interpretation that adds the level of, what's the way of putting it? It's the level of difference, the level of variation between things. So opening up a RAW file, say in Capture One, is likely to give you a RAW file that looks different from the very same RAW file from Lightroom, for instance. Yeah, there may be subtle differences. I mean, yeah, it's not going to change massively, but it's going to change a little bit, perhaps imperceptibly, and then different images might not look like they've changed at all. But the point is that in order to show a RAW file on the video, I've got to process that in the first place through Capture One or Lightroom. I'm using Lightroom to export it in a file format that the video software will accept. And therefore, what you're seeing isn't the RAW file, it's an interpretation of the RAW file. I know that's really being pedantic, but it's actually quite important to understand this because not that it's massively relevant to this topic here, but it's interesting to understand that the processing software that you're using may not, well, rather has an effect on the RAW file just in opening it. So if we look at my array of onions in Lightroom library here, the one that we're interested in is this one here. And of course what we can do now is make a few adjustments. So in order to show you exactly what has happened with this file, I'm going to just go through the history panel on Lightroom and we can click through each one to see exactly how that is kind of processed, and I'll talk about what it's doing as it goes. So at import it looks something like this, and then immediately I adjust the blacks. Now here I'm adding, is that a +7 to the blacks? I believe it is. Yes, it is. That's not having a massive effect, but it's having enough. If you look at the image itself, then I'll take that back down to 0 if I can. Double click on it, that'll do that. And I'm just pulling that up to +7. There, it's really, really subtle. But this is my starting point here, so we'll get that at 7. There we go. And I will just undo these things and go back and look at the second option here, or the second process, which was to adjust the highlights. And I take the highlights down by -39. Now, there's a big difference here. If I reset the highlights, just take a look at the window and the light on the onion. I'll take that down from 0 to 39. Where it was, or thereabouts anyway. There's 39. Look at that variation there. It's absolutely vital that we make that adjustment to pull those highlights right the way down so we get some definition in that area. We're only interested at this point in the definition. Yeah, we want to be able to see it because when we do further processing on it, we don't want to blow out something that's already too bright. The next element is the dehaze. Now, dehaze is an interesting tool in Lightroom because the idea is that it dehazes things, it takes haze out But if you put negative dehaze in it, it puts haze in, which is really rather nice. Haze, for this purpose as well, let's not forget, is not just the addition of kind of brightness, it also softens an image quite a lot. And maximum dehaze, if I just put maximum dehaze on that, you will see just how kind of dreamy it is. It's not nice, certainly not in this image. But if we take dehaze somewhere in the middle and make it negative 39, look at the difference that makes. I'll just move the mouse between the two history items here. Look at that difference. It's huge. And it's added a slightly dreamy effect to it, but it's only really kind of slight. And it's brought up the shadows, or rather it's added haze to the shadows without putting detail and definition into shadows. And this is crucial to this type of edit because if I may be so bold, I'm trying to get a kind of old masters type, painterly feel to it. It's not just I'm turning it into an old retro type photo. I'm trying to get a really aged look to it, so it could potentially also be a really good quality old painting. However, one of the things that happens when we dehaze is we put white into an image. So immediately I go back and I adjust the blacks, and I take the blacks down. If I just move the mouse between the dehaze and the blacks on the history here, you can see that taking those blacks back down is quite important here. So effectively what I've done with the dehaze is I've added a little bit of softness and then put the blacks back that the dehaze kind of took out. I then come down to the whites adjustment, and this is very, very subtle. You'll only see it really just in the highlight of the onion and in the window. If I just move the mouse backwards and forwards over that, you will see there's that just a little bit in the window up there. And again, whether that's vital at this stage, I don't know, because this is the process that I went through to get to this image. So it's so subtle, you might not notice the difference between it and not having it in the final version. Who can say? Editing and art is very subjective, so whether that's how you do it, I don't know. It's how I've done it. Now, the final thing that I've done in this edit is I've taken the shadows down. Again, I'm beginning to crush those shadows down a little because I don't want any real detail in the shadows. Again, to try and get that old masters type look to it, I hesitate to say that. I feel a bit like a prick saying it. If we just move between these two options here, you can see that I'm just kind of crushing it down there. And that's the point that I stopped editing it in Lightroom. And now I'm going to edit this in the Nik Collection Analog Efx 6. This is part of a DxO suite of programs that incorporates some really excellent processing software. I particularly like the Silver Efx program, when that allows you to do some absolutely astonishing edits to black and white images, the kind of things that you would have done in a darkroom many years ago, and then some. Just very, very good. But we're going to use Analog Efx Pro here, or Analog Efx 6, and the purpose of that is to add kind of vintage looks, vintage vibes, and grunge, all kinds of things to really give your images that real retro vibe. Analog Efx and the whole of Nik Collection can be launched from within Lightroom, and I assume also Capture One, but they're also standalone programs, so you can launch them independently. But here we can say Edit In and click Nik Analog Efx, Nik 6 Analog Efx, and here we say edit with a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Well, yeah, that's why we've just done that. Export it as a TIFF. Vitally export it as a TIFF so you get all of the data in the image. It's as much data as you can provide, and it gives the software the greatest latitude to do things. And click edit. The interface here is relatively simple. Over on the left hand side we've got a set of presets, when we've got a number of filters up here that allow us to do all kinds of things. You can see there aren't actually that many filters to it. Adjustments within that are really quite stunning though. So yeah, we can play with those a little later, or rather, you can play with them later. Download the trial. It's really good fun. I'm just going to go through the preset because I saved the preset for that edit, and I called it Window Light 1. And so we've got this slider in the center of the screen that allows us to see a before and after. For the minute, I'm just going to pour that to the left hand side a bit, and we'll talk about how these filters over here are working. So at the top of the filters collection here, we've got the detail extractor, and I am just going to move this around. You can see what that's doing. That's really pulling up the brightness of the thing quite a lot, and it's doing its thing. And you can see that by adding detail, we're adding quite a lot of light to it, a lot of brightness to it. So that's set at about 7 on here. So immediately after that, we're pulling the brightness down again, and we just take that down a little bit to kind of compensate, because what we want to do is use this setting to adjust the black point. Now we can adjust the black point using curves as well, but here at the minute we're just going to adjust it using that. We've set the contrast to 10%. Not a great deal of difference between the two. A lot of this is really subtle, and we've got the saturation set at 0, which means we're not adjusting the saturation. It's not that there isn't any, it's we're not adjusting it. We can collapse that for the time being, and let's look at light leaks. Now light leaks are an important part of the kind of retro camera vibe, because a lot of old cameras weren't light tight. You know, the little bits of light, streaks of light could kind of come in from the edge of the film area and do their damage, if you like. But it added character to an image, and we can do that here. I've got this light leak at the bottom here. I'll just take the comparison off so you can see what we've got. So this light leak at the bottom is quite interesting because it's really very subtle. And if we just take the light leak off, it looks subtle until you apply it. So it's actually adjusting a bit of color, because there's color in the light leak itself. It's doing quite a lot to the image to give it that really kind of old feel. So we'll collapse that panel as well, just that it's a little bit tidier on screen. One of the other facets of a film camera was getting crap inside it. Now, that's not to say we don't get crap inside our gear these days. They often need cleaning. Bits of dust and such settle on there, particularly if you take these things on and off in windy and dusty environments. And of course, they get on the sensor and such as well. In an old camera, of course, a lot of the lenses weren't removable. But the dust got in through the back, and concertina cameras and such. You know, the dust could harbour anywhere in those bellows and such. Yeah, quite grungy. But again, adding an aesthetic to it. So we can do that here in Analog Efx. There's lots of different dust effects and such. I just remember it's this one, which is number 5. But if I say add this one to it instead, you will see how, when that loads up, how that changes, or rather how it hasn't. Has it changed much? Sometimes you blink and you miss this. So let's just turn it on and off. Yes, it's added a difference to it. If we adjust the strength on it, you can see how that is adding a real different kind of aesthetic. And then if we put negative strength on it, it gives us the negative version of the dust and such. So yeah, you've got a lot of control here. Let's look at lens vignette. A lot of vignettes can be added in software. Lightroom will do it quite happily. Lightroom will do it post-crop. So yeah, it's live throughout your edit. So if you crop, having already added a vignette, it will readjust the vignette. It's really nice. That doesn't happen in this software. You can't crop in this software. So when you import into this software, or you open something in this software, it has to be the crop that you want to get out of it at the end if you're going to apply a vignette, because otherwise the vignette won't be even. That may not necessarily be a problem. You can obviously use them creatively. You can use, if you wanted a vignette to kind of add the idea perhaps that you're looking through something that's kind of defocused on the corner of an image or something. There's all kinds of ways of using this. But here, really importantly, we have the ability to adjust the shape and the size. So we've got the shape, circle and rectangle. So you can see over here, circle, rectangle. I've got the thing set completely to rectangle so that it really kind of pulls in right at the edges as well. And I've got the size on the outside edges, as you can see around here. And that's really just allowing a bit of kind of darkness creep all around the whole thing. And it's giving that vibe. I hate using the word, but yeah, it's quite appropriate here. The next element that I'm adding to this edit is film type. Now, we've got lots of different film types in here: warm, cool, subtle, black and white neutral, black and white toned. We are sticking with subtle, and we have selected, I've selected this final one here, and that's just giving it a really kind of gentle. Let me just turn it off so you can see what's happening with it. So that's the element that's adding the kind of haze and dropping the black so that there's no pure black in this again. So we've got this fade control here, which fades in, and gives an element of kind of brightness to the image. And then we've got the strength control, which controls how much kind of color is coming through it. We also here, because it's film type, have the ability to add grain to it, and that's where a lot of the character is also coming in here. So I've got quite a lot of grain on this, and I've set hardness to 0%. If we just move the grain around, you can see the real effect it has here. So we had it roughly in the middle, so down there not a great deal, and in here it's beginning to, when you get to the middle of this grain slider, it's beginning to really kind of add a certain texture and vintage film feel to it, which I think works quite nicely. And as we come to the bottom, we see our histogram for the levels and curves. I've only adjusted the RGB curve here, and you can see it's really, really slight. There's just this little kind of upturn at the bottom, taking the blacks away, so there's no pure black in here. And then there's this point here, which is just kind of adding that little curve at the edge there, and a further point here, although I suspect that isn't really doing a great deal there. But that's our edit there. So back in Lightroom, I've adjusted quite a lot over here. You can see there's a list of adjustments here. So I've adjusted the green and the yellow saturation points to take down the colors there a little bit. If we come back to this here, you can see there's a little bit of adjustment going on. There's really not very much happening to it, but it is just taking a slight edge off this. I've then added a subject mask and added some clarity. When we zoom into 100%, we can really see the grain on this. Obviously, when we're viewing a lot of these images, we're viewing them at a distance, or we're viewing them at a kind of a squashed zoom. So some of this detail isn't there, which is absolutely fine, because if you're only ever viewing on a small screen or such, you can kind of over-egg these things a little bit, mate, not too much, so that they're still visible when you crunch them down. Because of course, when you squeeze something down that's got a lot of detail in, you have to lose that detail. This is when we talk about prints and such, we talk about kind of viewing distance, and our viewing distance to a screen is rarely anything more than what I'm sat here, 24 inches, 2 foot, something like that, 600 mil. The kind of 20 megapixels of my camera is kind of 5 times the the resolution of the screen. 5, no more. It's a 10 times factor. 1080p is about 2 megapixels. So it's, yeah, it's all kind of relative. If you add all this kind of grain detail and then squash a 20 megapixel file, or yeah, lots of phones will shoot that. Lots of cameras will shoot lots more than that. Yeah, and you kind of cram that down into something that's a tenth of the original size, and it's you begin to wonder why actually anyone needs much more than kind of 15 megapixels. I mean, often you don't. But anyway, I digress. The point is, zoomed in here, we can see the grain, and we can see how if I just mouse over this, we can see how this clarity adjustment just adds a little bit more kind of clarity. It's just doing that. And then I update the texture as well. So I'll hover between the two here, see the difference. And that adds a little bit more kind of punchiness to the grain. And then adding a dehaze adjustment to it. And you can see it's having an effect down in this area here. And then the shadows adjustment, again, it's all on the mask. In actual fact, the shadows adjustment barely looks like it's doing anything to it. It might if we zoom out and just look at it. Not really a lot there. But then we change the shadows of the entire image and not on the mask. And that has quite a difference. So we darken it down a little bit more. We're adding a brush here. Now, what are we brushing? Let's have a look at that. Where have we brushed? That's not all. It's here. There we are. Now this is an interesting one. So if you go back to the original shooting of this, I point out that this corner here I want visible. But in my processing, what I've managed to do is darken it down to such a point where it's virtually invisible. So what I've done here is I've added this brush and I'm just adjusting the shadows on it. So we can see here, shadows and highlights, but it's ever so subtle. You probably would only see it if we zoom in a little bit. And it's this area here in the middle, there and there. It's very, very subtle. Arguably not strong enough, but it's enough. Then I've updated the brush a little bit there, probably just to darken that down a little bit, or rather, make the brush deeper if you like. And then I've just exported it, and we have the final image. Now, I don't know how useful that is to you. Obviously, there's quite a lot of processing going on, not a massive amount, but there's a lot of thought going into it as well to try and produce the type of image that I think, the type of image that I had in my head, a week or so ago, whilst I was out in the kitchen behind me here doing the photography for this. Now, I've done a number of these shots with different things. Let me just go and get some of the other things I've shot with. Hold on. So when I first tried this, I had these two underdeveloped figs. I know that's going to focus there on my hide, so it does. And there's another one here. I just love the textures of these. It's really what got me into it. If you go back to the last week's video, you'll see just how simple the setup and the shot itself is. These things work for me because of their textures. There's nothing terribly clinical about them. In fact, there's nothing clinical about them at all. They are wonderful little things that really take light incredibly well. It's those elements that really attract me. Someone in the comments to last week's said that, and of course sliced onions, sliced vegetables and such work really well as well. And of course they absolutely do. The textures and everything are great. But the action of, say, slicing that onion takes it from being a really rustic feeling, kind of earthy type product, if you like. Product's obviously the wrong word. Into something that is rather kind of clinical. Yeah, you've got this straight hard cut. Maybe I should try sawing it. I don't know. But and it's that kind of hard cut that I don't want. I want that aged feeling, and in order to get that aged feeling, I need a rough texture. If we were to work with smooth textures, I think I'd be using a different setting. Normally, I can just kind of say, well, I'm done now, but I could probably talk about this for a very long time. So how about then if, as part of my my membership, then if you remember, there aren't many at the moment, but if you want to become a member, how about we set up a Zoom meeting or something at some point where we kind of discuss these ideas and talk about what kind of gets the creative juices flowing, because it's these lovely little textures for me that do it. I'm not so much into the clinical side of things. Although, having said that, I'll reach over for this. If you're following my socials, I think probably on Instagram and Facebook, this was a gift from my darling wife for my birthday. It's a little miniature of a blood orange gin. I'm not going to open it because it for me has far more photographic attraction than it does drinking. Well, I suppose that's not true. I'll drink it eventually, but I think it's a lovely aesthetic little bottle, and I've got a couple of really lovely shots of that, and I might do a video on that or talk on that. I'm using this light stick. I've got a couple of those from K&F. Again, links are down below. They're rather nice sticks, and really inexpensive as well. And I'm using it to get kind of key highlights and such on the bottle. So it's not that I don't shoot these clean and clinical things. It's just that for this aesthetic I haven't. But I will if you want to have a discussion about shooting things like this or a video on them. Yeah, let me know down in the comments. But for now, I will put up a quick slideshow of the things from my my kitchen window. Thanks for listening to the waffle. Let me know if this is in any way useful to you, and if you want a copy of the Nik collection, then heck, as I say, it's truly wonderful. I'm using it more and more. Links down below, free trials, and also there's an affiliate link. If you go and buy, it will really help me out, because this channel costs a lot of money to run. So if you want some software, give something back and use that link. That's it. You thought it was over before, didn't you? It is now. Thanks for watching. Take care. See you next week.